Welcome back to the channel. Curious to know if this has happened to anyone else? Buckle up because this is going to be kind of insane and long. When I was a kid, my family and I lived in a pretty old house in Tennessee. The house was built in the 1920s, I believe. The house was shaped like a square, almost like a racetrack you could go around. Anyway, my sister's and my bedroom door was in the living room, and the hallway was to the left. I used to have recurring nightmares and sleep paralysis of a tall man with a hat coming down the hallway toward my bedroom door, and I would always wake up before he entered my room. It was a textbook sleep paralysis story. During the summer, my mom would leave me and my 3 siblings home alone while she worked. She would come home tired, and since she had a lot of kids, she didn't like us to immediately stampede her when she arrived home. So, one day, we were all chilling in the living room watching TV while our mom was at work, just doing the usual. We heard our mom get home from work early that day, and we were happy as can be. We heard the back door open, and she came in talking to her friend on her Bluetooth. She always wore these black leather boots, and we heard them clunking on the floor as she walked and talked toward us. When she was almost to the living room, she was at the end of the hallway, where I mentioned earlier that I used to see the shadow man in my dreams. Guess what? When we got up to greet her in that spot, she wasn't there. We were all stunned. My sister called her, and you guessed it, she was still at work. I hadn't told my brother about the shadow man before, but when I did, he said he saw him too in the bathroom, which was in that same hallway. My mom said she used to hear my little brother calling her name when he wasn't home. I hated that house. Being haunted by my very alive husband. I used to live in a house with my ex-partner, who was emotionally and verbally abusive. His outbursts of rage, followed by days or weeks of silence, made the house extremely tense. Most of my friends stopped visiting because of the energy there. You could feel the tension just by walking in, but as his wife, I had grown used to it. My first unsettling experience happened in the first house we shared, an 80s Cape Cod-style home. I moved in after we got engaged, and for the first 6 months, everything was normal. Sometimes, my dog would bark incessantly at the end of the hallway at nothing, and I'd hear the typical creaks of an old house. Eventually, we got married and continued living there while searching for a newer home. Things changed when my husband started working the night shift. Still living in the Cape Cod, we began to argue more frequently. He would follow me around the house, yelling until I resolved things by apologizing and catering to him, and then we'd move on. His attitude became increasingly hostile, and I started walking on eggshells. As long as he was happy, things were fine. He was happy as long as I did everything, cooked meals, cleaned the house, earned money, avoided seeing friends, let him do whatever he wanted, left him alone, didn't show any negative emotions, didn't talk too much or too little, didn't move too much in my sleep, did his laundry, color-coded his clothes facing the same direction, and didn't try to talk to him before or after dinner, and definitely not in bed. You get the gist. The first night I saw the shadow figure, I was home alone while he was at work. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw what looked like him on his side of the bed, holding his cell phone. I could see his shoulder outline and the glow from the screen. Surprised that he was home early, I didn't want to make him angry by asking, so I pretended to sleep. After a few minutes, he hadn't moved, so I reached for my phone and checked the time, around 3 a.m. I turned over to ask if he was okay, but he was just standing there, looking at me. I could see his outline, his ears, and shoulders. It was like he was darker than the darkness itself. He was just standing there. My fight or flight response kicked in, and I immediately grabbed my pillow, threw it at him, grabbed my phone, and ran out of the house. There was no sign of a break-in, and no one else was in the house. I didn't sleep that night. Fast forward a year to the new house, a brand new home in a residential neighborhood. At first, little things happened, lights flickering, the TV acting up, all things I could ignore. But he had become harder to appease and understand, with silent treatments lasting weeks. The tension between us was unbearable. One night at 3 a.m., our bedroom fire alarm went off. Later that week, my girlfriend and I heard footsteps upstairs when no one else was home. I have no kids, my dog was with me, and my ex was sleeping. Strange things continued, lights flashing on and off, items moving or disappearing, the TV turning on in the middle of the night, and our house being struck by lightning twice. Towards the end of our marriage, when his abuse was bordering on violence, I saw the shadow again. We had argued the week before, and he had been giving me the silent treatment ever since. Again, he was at work, and I woke up in the middle of the night to footsteps at the foot of the bed. When I opened my eyes, the same shadow was on his side of the bed. The odd thing was that it looked like him from the older house, with short hair, even though he had grown his hair out to his shoulders by then. But it was him, staring again from his side of the bed. In my sleepy, worn-down state, I ignored it and went back to sleep. I felt like that thing wasn't directed at me. I wouldn't say I felt safe, but I knew the darkness wasn't mine, if that makes sense. This is much longer than I intended, but has anyone else experienced being haunted by the living? Subscribe.